about something like that. I was in York County Prison at one point, and there was a guy who was getting released on good time, and it was like January, so it was really cold out, and he was a homeless dude, and he had nowhere to go, and he was freaking out when they called him to pack his stuff to go.
Yeah.
And what he did was he left, and when he left the front gate, he tried to climb back over the gate.
Oh my gosh!
So eventually what happened was he went back to jail, but this time he went to state prison for trying to break into a secure facility.
Wow.
Well, hey,
You usually try to
secured
break
housing.
out.
Right. He was trying to break back
in.
in, yeah. But I mean, that's the thought process, though, and that's part of his mental illness as well, because like he did have some mental health issues that he wasn't dealing with, that he wasn't getting proper treatment for in jail.
No.
And so like he was just all he knew was survival mode. It's cold out. I've got nowhere to go. I want to stay here. So he tried to get back in.
Exactly. And that's the thing. I don't really have a great perspective on what happens on that end of things, on the jail end of things. But I mean, I know you're supposed to have a home plan.
You guys should each do like that 30 days in thing.
Right.
I watched
serious.
that. I'm so fascinated by that show. I was watching it on home.
You guys
on
should
Friday.
do that. It should be part of your training.
Yeah. Well,
I think.
The home plan thing, though, is if you're making parole or probation. If you max out your time,
like
there
that's
is
it.
No,
you're just out the
out
door.
the door.
See, to me, that's so
Counterproductive.
Yeah, extremely counterproductive. Like, what does that do? First, we have taken you out of society for a period of time, and now boop, your time's up. You're out the door with nothing.
And it's crazy because they do have block counselors and stuff like that that rarely you get like access to on a regular basis. You know, you can put in these request forms to meet with them or whatever, but like you rarely get to see them, and they really don't do much. They might let you make a phone call like before release, but that's about it, man. Like they don't do much else besides that.
I will say one of the things that has changed with our program is that over, say, the last year, we've had a lot more involvement from the prison, which is very, very helpful. They've been helpful in identifying people who are appropriate for the program. They've been helpful in facilitating those people getting into the program. They've been very helpful. So I feel like that is moving the program in the right direction. We also now have an assistant district attorney on the team.
Oh, wow.
Which is very nice. Yeah. So that's a change. That's a change since the beginning of January with a new DA in office.
So what kind of dynamic does that change, though? Because you've always had, like, probation representing the county.
Yeah.
And you've always had the public defender. You know, when you go in front of the judge, you got a probation officer on one side and you got a public defender on the other side.
Yeah.
So, like, what role does the ADA play now?
Well, it's more of a team role.
Okay.
I will say the dynamic in the reinforcement hearing. So just to go back a little bit to explain to your audience what a reinforcement hearing is. So it's a 5-phase program. In the first phase of the program, you're coming to court every week and you're going in front of the judge for a reinforcement hearing. Your PO is there. The ADA is there. Well, now the ADA is there. Your PD is there, your public defender, and the whole team. And, you know, it's a check-in with the judge.
Right.
So then you're in the second phase of the program, you're doing that every 2 weeks. Third phase of the program, you're doing that every 3 weeks, 4, and so on. So, you know, when you come in for your reinforcement hearing, I think it's very similar to how it's always been. The ADA really doesn't speak up unless there's an issue. You know, because really it's that check-in is for you and the judge.
Right.
So
like, I know, like, all right, so, like, if something ever went wrong and I was getting ready to go up for a sanction for something, right?
Yeah.
The judge would ask me what was going on,
Yep.
and then they would ask my PO to speak and give their recommendation, and then they would ask the public defender to speak. So is that something the ADA does now, too, as well? They give their input, so to speak, like the probation officer would do?
There hasn't been too much an opportunity for that since the beginning of January, but I would say I think primarily the way that's happening is really in the meeting.
Okay. Because, I mean, that's ADA's prosecution, so their
Yes.
goal is to put you in jail while the public defender is to keep you out of jail.
In traditional
Right. So that's
criminal
why
justice.
I was curious about the dynamic of it.
Yeah, and in the traditional criminal justice system. But in our program, we are all kind of focused on the same thing, which is
What's
your
best.
recovery.
Right. What's best
You
for
know,
the individual.
What are your needs right now?
Okay.
So maybe your needs are, you know, a sanction. Maybe there's a punitive need. Maybe there's, a therapeutic need. Maybe there's both. Usually there's both. You know?
That's probably some of the hardest decisions to make on that treatment team, too, is how to handle each and every individual situation.
Yes.
Because, like, when these people are coming in, they make a mistake, but if you decide to put them in jail for 48 hours, they could lose their job.
Right.
You know? So, like, I can't imagine how hard it is to make the decisions on how you hand out these little punishments for small violations.
And that question really is for Judge Daly, who has to make those calls. And, you know, there have been times where he's been very accommodating. He's like, oh, well, you work tomorrow. Well, why don't you go in on Saturday? But you know what? He's backing away from that more and more. It's like, no, you know what? You can go in right now.
Here's my perspective on that. Like, it would be cool to, you know, be able to accommodate the job. But like somebody like me, once I start screwing up, I want to screw all the way up. And if I feel like I'm in trouble, I'm not going to want to turn myself into the jail because why? Right. Why would I do that?
Right.
You know, I'm already in trouble, so what's a little bit more trouble? You know, and that's and that's unfortunately a lot of addicts think that way, or they don't even think about it at all. It's like it's second nature.
It's second nature.
Let's run. Oh no, I'm in trouble. I'm gonna run away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's, I think, the hardest. The thing that we're still really trying to foster is the idea of being honest and being the first one to say I screwed up. That's really hard. I mean, that's hard for somebody who doesn't have the kind of history. Oh, what Tony's like.
I don't know anybody who that just admits to everything they do.
Actually,
wrong.
I know somebody that very recently just did that.
Yes.
And you know him too, but we're not gonna put names out there.
No, we're not. But we all knew who we're talking about.
He knew he messed up.
Yep.
And actually, before he went to everybody, he actually asked for some advice from a couple people.
Did he?
And was like, I don't know what to do. And we suggested to him, honesty is the best policy.
Truly.
And I got to tell you, he made out like a bandit. You know.
Well, I mean, that phrasing, but yeah, no,
right?
I mean,
the phrasing.
The phrasing is off, but I mean, understandably so, because like I've seen people in that same situation that weren't quite honest about it until they got caught.
Yeah.
Mixed terminology.
Right. It's like, when are you going to be? Are you
going to be
strong enough to say, hey, you know what?
Responsible,
P.O.,
accountable for yourself.
This happened, and I need to tell you that this happened, because you're in a different place then.
Absolutely.
You're in a different place mentally and emotionally, and if we can move you along that track,
that's a deeper understanding of recovery.
Yes, and that was because it really, when that happened, it hurt a little bit.
Right.
You know, it was like, oh no. But I was so proud of that person for being able to do that, and that is a huge difference.
Absolutely.
For that person.
Absolutely.
And that's really good to see. But I feel like we can do more as a team to foster that. And I do think it's important for other participants to see the outcome when somebody is the first to say I screwed up, when somebody is honest. You know, I think that's helpful.
There has to be one for every generation of clients that you have coming into the courtroom. You know, you have to, like, they have to have one for every group. Like, there was one for our group. There was one. I think it actually happened to me once in my group. I missed a urine once because I was mourning a friend who had just passed away, and I freaked out about it. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I'm calling my PO. I'm calling everybody. Like, I forgot.
and being like, I came in between two separate groups. So like, I was in the middle of like a graduating class and like a beginner's class. You know, so like I got to see both ends of that spectrum. Where I've seen what not to do and what to do. You know, so like I actually had a pretty big advantage of seeing some old timers in the program, so to speak. That were not quite doing well, and what exactly happened to them. Exactly. You know, and I always said this before too. When I was in the halfway house, we had an outside speaker come in, and he said, you know, I got tired of being told what to do, so I just started doing what I had to do, so they couldn't tell me what to do anymore. And that like resonated with me for a very long time, and that's exactly how I approached it when I went through the program. Like, they gave me a very specific set of guidelines. These are the things that are expected of me. They told me one time. And then I just did it.
Yes.
Plain and simple. I just did it. I didn't have to ask questions. I didn't have to be told twice. Here's what you need to do. Okay, cool. I'm going to do it.
And there's a lot of people in there that just tell everybody what they want to hear.
Oh, yeah.
Just to pass through.
Exactly. And there's a lot of people that still that haven't quite made that next step into their recovery, that are still trying to manipulate to do the bare minimum, just to make it look like they're in recovery.
Right.
You know, they get their little paper signed, they show up at some meetings, whatever, but they're not really engaged. They're not really participating.
Right. And so how do we kind of ferret that out?
Can you?
Can we even? I mean,
because you're talking about a group of individuals that are very clever and very intellectual, that can sell you whatever the hell you're looking for.
Right. And they're very practiced at it. Very
practiced
at it. And so it's frustrating for me because sometimes I can sense something's
off,
not right. Yeah,
but you can't exactly be like, you're fucking lying. There's no way. Like, you can't stand up in the courtroom and be like, bullshit. I call bullshit, because
I
the judge can.
I go home and I call bullshit. I'm like,
right.
Oh my god.
But, like,
you know what?
You can't
bullshit
just,
I heard today.
Right. But you can't just outright accuse somebody especially if you don't have evidence. I mean, and you know that with the law background, you got to have the evidence. Right?
And I'm not. We're not looking to trip anybody up. We're trying to help people. Make the next right choice.
Right.
And do what they need to do for themselves. Because it's not about me. It's not about the judge. It's not about your PO. It is not about the DA. It is not about anybody sitting around that table. It is about that individual. And this is their opportunity. And you don't get a whole lot of opportunities like this. I mean, there are people who've gotten it twice.
I was going to say, don't we got a third time around or
not
something
yet.
like that?
Not yet. Nope. Not yet.
Would that even be something that's allowed, though, honestly? Like a third time?
Don't have a preclusion against it.
So there's nothing saying that you can't participate multiple times, right?
Because you can fall into a relapse of behavior at any point in time.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So, say I complete the program, and God forbid, a year down the line, something happens and I get in more trouble.
Right.
Like, I would...
So
hopefully I would, still be smart enough to talk to the people that I know I can talk to, but say something happens, I get in trouble, I catch some charges, and I end up back in front of them, that shouldn't exclude me. That's just
as long as
another statement.
As long as the charges don't take you outside of the sentencing guidelines, right?
Right. So, say if you're a refill,
Tony,
can we help you? I don't know.
Nick as well.
Are you a refill too?
The last charge, actually, the last conviction of this last burglary charge put me on a refill.
See, that makes me crazy because you guys are. I mean, look at you.
So
look
here's
at you.
Just look at them.
Look at them. Just
look at those faces.
But now here's
600
a question.
pounds of the two of us.
So here's a good question, though. All right, so I've lived in a couple different counties, and I've been involved in the justice system in different counties.
Yeah.
One of the counties I used to live in was York County, and they were one of the first counties in PA to get a drug court system.
Yes.
But they have a incentive-based program. So, if you come in with new charges, you don't get sentenced right away. You complete the program, and then your charges get reduced.
Right.
So why? My question is why aren't all court systems like that, or do you feel like that is not beneficial to do?
The reason we are the kind of program we are, meaning that the reason that we only handle. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? The reason that we only handle probation and parole violations and intermediate punishment is because that is what we could get people to agree to when we wanted to start the program.
Gotcha.
Right.
Understood.
Because
those incentive programs for somebody like me and Tony who have got a pretty extensive record, something like that could have prevented me from becoming a refill.
It's interesting though because sometimes I think maybe you're not capturing high-risk, high-need people.
This is true, too.
So there are a lot of different models across the state, across the country, and I did some research before we started our program. And like I said, we didn't really have a whole lot of control in terms of, whether we were going to have a program for, a diversionary program or not a diversionary program, which is what we have. Yeah.
With talking about the stage, the changes that you've done throughout the years of having the recovery court going, I would like to expand on that conversation in our next episode a little bit more, just to touch on the intricacies of what type of research you did to make the changes. So I'd like to save that. We'll save that for our next episode.
Okay.
So we can go into a little bit more detail with that.
Okay.
All right.
Then I won't get into that now. So what do you want me to get into right now?
Is there anybody that ever stood out to you like, oh, this person is not going to do too